Need a handout? We've got them right here for you. My buddy's going to make sure you get them. And I wonder if we could start today with just a word of prayer as we do that. Father, every one of us here this afternoon wants to improve ourselves. We want to improve ourselves, Father, in our own leadership, and it doesn't mean that we're going to be some gifted leader that's going to be able to wax eloquent, but we're going to lead better at home, in our marriages, in our family, with our kids, our grandkids. We want to be better. And as we worked on that yesterday, Father, thank you for showing us some keys to leadership. And now, today, Lord, we talk about this thing of what it really means to have wisdom as a healthy team. And Lord, I pray that you'd help each of us to be able to be a team, be a part of a team that's going to be productive. I pray, Father, you'd show us our weak spots, show us the areas where we can improve, and we'll thank you, Father. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Well, just a couple words before we take off and get going today. What I'm going to work with you on today, the outline I'm going to use here today, is actually something that I used with our team at our church. And when I say this, the team I worked with in our church were all people that received some type of compensation, some type of pay. These are not volunteers. These are people who are part of our team. We have, I think we have 13 pastors on staff, and we have about 85 employees, and many of those are part-time employees. So when I work with a team, we get them together, I constantly tell people I'm like a zookeeper. I've got to keep all the animals in their proper cages, and I've got to keep everybody learning how to work together and to do it well. And in our team, there are natural built-in tensions. For example, our facility people want things to be done neat and on time, and they want to be communicated with. Our student ministries people want to fly by the seat of their pants. And if the room gets cleaned up afterwards, or if we're going to do this, we're going to do it. And facilities sometimes can look at student ministry people and say they're irresponsible. Student ministry people look at facility people and say they don't really care about ministry. They just want this building to look perfect. And so we've got to do all these things where we have to keep alignment in our teams. We often find that when it comes to bookkeeping and paying bills. I don't know how many of you are the type of people when it comes to bookkeeping and paying bills that you are concerned about every last penny, and you want to make sure bills have to be done right. You got it right. Are any of you precise people when it comes to keeping books? Yeah, my wife has that disease, and I've told her there's medicine for that. She doesn't have to be that way. When it comes to books, I want it to be done right, but I'm a ballpark guy. If Christy comes to me and tells me that she's 2 cents off in the checkbook, I'll give her 2 pennies. Who cares? I'm a big picture guy, and it has to be done right. I discovered how important that is when I went in for surgery. I had a tear in one of my arteries, and they had to go in and put a stent in there. And I didn't want a ballpark surgeon. I didn't want someone that's going to be close. I wanted someone that's going to do the thing absolutely perfect to do it right. But sometimes in our teams, there are going to be these natural tensions that are going to develop. But I have to tell you, there's nothing better than seeing a team that works right, that does it right, where all the components come together in their diversity, their uniqueness, and everybody continues. Now, when I'm going to talk about teams, I'm going to talk about families. It's kind of interesting. We had lunch today in North Branch, just down the road here. The pastor of North Branch Wesleyan is a guy that went through one of our training programs, and his wife was my daughter's best friend in high school, so we just ran over to have lunch with them today, and only two of their 3 children were at lunch today. And the one girl, I think she's maybe in 3rd grade, wasn't there. And I said to Sarah, I miss your daughter. And she said, oh, that's the fiery one. She said, in this family, she makes sure there's plenty of excitement. She's the one that's very outspoken. And I thought about the dynamics of this thing as a family. In fact, one of the things we're going to work with today is we're going to mention this a couple times. And this is where I just wish it was 2 or 3 of us and I could just talk to you. In your family, were you the youngest or the oldest? Middle child. She has now told me something about dynamics of how a team is going to work. Middle child. What were you? Middle child. Wow. Oldest. Responsible adult right there. Got to be responsible. How many of you are the youngest in your family? Okay. How many of you in your families, you would say you never saw your mother or father really have a good, hard argument, or you never really saw them really get mad at each other? Isn't that interesting? You've told me a lot about yourself. You've told me a lot about how you're going to do conflict by what you just said. Because how many of you come from a family that, man, what you felt is what you said, you were open, you just got it out, and it's just, you're pretty blunt with each other in your family. Raise your hand if you're on the blunt side of things. There's a few of you are. You've told me a lot about how you're going to do conflict. And it's interesting how our family of origins are oftentimes going to show us how we're going to do this thing of teams. You tell me a lot about your parents, tell me a lot about how you grew up, and I will tell you a lot about how you're going to function as a team. Okay, first assignment. We're going to do this. If you weren't here yesterday, one of the things I love to do is get you in pockets of 2, 3s, and 4s where you can visit with each other and you can talk to each other. So you need to make sure you're not flying solo, okay? So find somebody you can share with, just at least 2, not more than 4 in your little pocket. And I'm going to give you an assignment right now. I want you to tell me what you think was or is an incredible team. It could come from sports, it can come from business, it can come from Hollywood, it can come from anywhere. I'm going to give you 60 seconds. Are you ready? The clock is going to start, the music will shortly begin, and here we go. 60 seconds, a team that you thought was a pretty amazing team, the interaction of the people. Okay, here we go. The clock is started. Go. I need to find out about your team. An incredible, amazing team. Are you ready? It can be anywhere. Any group of people that came together to accomplish a task or to share together, teams. Do you have a team over here? Did you ladies get a team? Did you find a team for me?
Yes, respect for each other's point of view.
Okay. They talked about an ingredient of a healthy team, and that is respect. So hold that one. That's a good one. Hold that one. Talk to me about a specific team, though. I want a specific team. Did you guys find a team?
I'm big science fiction nerd.
Science fiction.
And just the
The crew
crew of the Enterprise.
of the Enterprise from what? Next generation. Okay, now that's beyond me. You know, I'm a dinosaur, but there's a crew there that became an incredible team. Did you guys come up with a team?
We talked about Lincoln's cabinet.
Lincoln's cabinet. Interesting to see. In fact, Lincoln is an interesting person to study on team building. There's a book out on team building with Abraham Lincoln. That's an incredible read. Over here, did you guys get a team? The Globetrotters. Oh, man. You're my generation. The Globetrotters. The Harlem Globetrotters were really incredible, weren't they? They all had a role. Was it Curly Neal would do his things? Of course, Meadowlark Lemon. They had all these guys who would do that. And they came together with their great skills, but they all knew their roles. One guy was a great dribbler. One guy tried a half-court shot and a showman. But they all had their roles. That is interesting. I've never had anyone share that before. That is good. Did you guys come up with a team? SEAL Team 6. Wow. I read the book on SEAL Team 6 and how they operate. In fact, I just finished reading another book on that whole concept of, it's the guy that was the founder of Delta in the Army. Is it Delta? Delta Force. He was the founder of Delta Force. Amazing what they go through to build those teams. Anybody back over in here, you got a team for me? 1980 hockey, which was obviously the Red Wings, I would suppose. Oh, the Olympics. Oh, I have an acquaintance that does a whole shtick on the 1980 Olympic hockey team. In fact, that's his thing. He speaks all across the country about that as the greatest team that ever came together. Herb Brooks, the coach. I had the opportunity to meet in an airport Mike Eruzione, if you remember that name from that team. Do you know the one team that you've not mentioned? That I'm shocked. Which year? Detroit Tigers. Give me a year. Go back. 68 Detroit Tigers. That's the one I was looking for. 68 Detroit Tigers. Okay, who was the star pitcher in the 68 Detroit Tigers? There was another one. Denny McLain. You got it right. Mickey Lolich, Denny McLain. There you go. Okay, now who was the great outfielder on the 68 Detroit Tigers? Al Kaline. You got it great. Did Norm Cash play for the Detroit Tigers?
Yes.
Norm Cash played. Who was the catcher on the 1968 Detroit Tigers? Bill Freehand. You guys are great. This is incredible. It's really interesting because the 68 Tigers were interesting. Didn't McLean win 30 games that year? 31. You got it. This is great. There you go. You got it down. Now, I have to tell you, though, that I was a Yankees fan. Sorry. But the 61 Yankees lost. Was that the year they lost to Pittsburgh Pirates in the World Series? And Bill Mazeroski hit this home run in the 9th inning and beat my Yankees. I was speaking to the Huntington College Board of Trustees, Huntington University, and I was doing a thing from the Yankees, 1961 Yankees, and I pretty much knew who played what position and was doing this. A guy came up to me afterwards. He introduced himself to me. He was a judge in a circuit court over in northwest Indiana. That guy knew every Yankee, knew every batting average, every hometown. He was a trivia guy off the charts, and he thought the Yankees were the greatest team ever. Now, here's the question. Nobody said the Pistons, by the way. Here's the question. The Pistons had a good team. The Bad Boys. There you go. We're gonna let you claim Dennis Rodman. Okay, there you go. You can have Rodman all to yourself along with Bill Laimbeer. Okay. Now, thank you. Now, here's what I want to work with you on. What are the characteristics that made some teams excel and made them better? What are the characteristics that make some families get better? What are the characteristics that make healthy churches? What are the common characteristics? Now, what I want to do is I'm going to work with you. And in fact, on your sheet you've got there, I'm going to talk to you about 5 keys that we're going to work with on these teams that come together. Frankly, and I know some of you don't really get off on the athletic references, but I frankly find the finest athletic team ever were the San Antonio Spurs a year ago when they won the NBA championship. Because they won the championship not with necessarily an individual star, but they won the championship by having these people who could play together. And they passed the ball, they worked together in such an amazing way. So, what are the keys? Here we go. Key number 1, to be a healthy team. If you need sheets, I've got them here, by the way. You can distribute. Okay, here we go. Key number one, shared values. Shared values. For any group of people to come together and be able to work together, they have to value the same things. If they do not value the same things, they will not have teamwork. In fact, what I say on your sheet there is a basic agreement on what's the big deal and what isn't the big deal. Those values determine, and I put on our sheet here for our staff, they determine our way of doing business. How are we going to do business? How are we going to operate? Shared values. Now, I wrote down some things. I wrote down when I was working with our team, and I said, what is a big deal to us as a team? What's a big deal to us? What's really important to us? In fact, if I could talk to you about your church for a second, what is really important at your church as a team? What's really important? Seeing people saved. Outreach, change lives. Oh man, you're singing my tune. In fact, I say this when it comes to church, we have one mission, and that is change lives. We celebrate changed lives. When we don't see changed lives, we're not doing our job. So what's going to be a big deal to us is the power of stories and of changed lives. Now, there are values, though, that you're going to have, and you started to talk about those when you gave us your point. There are values that are very important. The values are, how are we going about accomplishing the task? What are the values? For example, let me tell you just some things on our team, and you're going to have it on your team. On our team, one of the things we work on in the greater team with our leaders is what we do, we will do together. That's a big value of ours. What we do, we're going to do together. And that's why sometimes when we face challenges, we'll slow the train down just a little bit to help people that are the late adapters. You guys know there are some people that are early adapters. Every idea they've ever heard, they love it. There are some people that are late adapters. Every idea they've ever heard, they hate it. And then there are middle adapters. Mid-adapters take some time. We are a bit cautious in how we go about change because one of our values is, I want to help you go with us in what we're going to do. Now, that doesn't mean we stop the train if you're not going to go with us. We're going to slow it down long enough to try to get you to come along with us. I was telling someone the other day, I think we're just heading in, I think our 8th or 9th building program. And buildings are not a lot of fun for me anymore. I told a few years back, I never want to build another building. Done it so many times. If you've ever seen our facility, it is a testimony to the fact we had no idea what was going to happen. And this thing just exploded. And so you got all these roof lines going every which way there. And we're getting ready to build another building. And so I had to go back to this thing and saying, I've got to bring everybody along on the journey. I've got to help them come. I've got to give time for the late adapters. Now, can I be very blunt with you on this? Be very, very blunt. We're going to spend one day working on this thing of change and how we go about change. Last night's service was really remarkable. Now, I know for a lot of people in this room, it was a language of worship that isn't your primary worship language. When I go to India and they do a service in Hindi or Telugu or Bengali, I don't understand what they're doing. And sometimes, as in the church, we're in this curve of change right now that is just so intense. It's so heavy. What did I do with my extra sheets here? Someone got them? Oh, there they are. We can get them to them. That change can be difficult. And that's why we want to bring people along as we go through changes. Who was it that just came to me and was talking to me about a mid-course correction? This was great. My brother over here, if you were here yesterday morning when I talked about it's time for a mid-course correction when it comes to this thing of evangelism, he had a great insight. He said, when you make a mid-course correction, the later you wait to make the correction, the greater degree of correction you have to have. So sometimes you're better to start your correction a little earlier so you don't have to make it so radical. And we have to have shared values. Shared values. So I would look at you and say, what are the values as to how you're going to do business? When you're in a team, what are the values? For example, remember James and John, their mother? Remember when James and John's mother went to Jesus and said, how would it be if my sons become co-vice presidents of this operation? Left hand, right hand. Remember what Jesus said? Nah, you got to be a servant. There was a value there that said on this team, we're here to serve. We're not here to lord, we're here to serve. And we're going to do that. What's a big deal? Let's go on. Number two. Second key is shared ownership. Shared ownership. Now, this one is a bit tricky. Let me kind of explain it to you this way. How many of you in your life have ever rented a car? Raise your hand if you've ever rented a car somewhere. How many of you have vacuumed a car out that you've rented? You vacuumed out a rental car. The hands are much fewer. Now, why is it that when you have a rental car, you don't vacuum it, but if you have a car you own, you tend to vacuum it a lot more? Because you don't own it. You don't own it. That which you own, you care for. You take responsibility for it. That's the difference between a renter and an owner. Now, when you build a team together, you have to have everyone understand that we're in this together. We're in this together. They feel a sense of ownership. Years ago, I did a silly thing. I had a friend who was a stockbroker, and he gave me a hot stock tip. And he said, you need to buy, and it was a restaurant chain. This thing is going to go great. He said, it used to be at $32 a share. It's down to $4 a share. This thing is going to take off. I know the company. You got to do it. And so I bought just a few shares, not a lot. And every time I'd go into that restaurant to eat, my meal tasted different once I owned shares because I wanted to see that thing succeed. And all of a sudden, when I'm going in there and they're getting sloppy on service, I'm saying to myself, this thing isn't going to make it. In fact, it didn't make it. My $4 investment was sold at $2 because that thing didn't go. Now, I cared about it because I was an owner of that stock. Now, here's what happens today. Can I just take a little sidetrack for a second? Here's what's happening in the church today that's really tough and hard. A lot of people today do not feel ownership in their local congregation. They feel like they're consumers, not sponsors. Consumers come to use a product. Sponsors put the product on. Now, most of us in this room, if you're around my age, you come from a different generation. You come from a generation of fierce, dogged loyalty. You're going to fight to the finish line. You're going to go for it. And one of the things we have to do is we have to help people feel like they own. For example, in your family, if you feel in your family that you don't have a voice, that no one listens to you, no one makes you feel a part of it, you're going to pull and withdraw from that family. You're going to pull back from that family. You're not going to be as invested in that family. So here's the question. If we're going to be a team, how do we get the team to feel ownership? Or if you're going to build a company, how do you get the employees to feel like this is their company? How many people check out of work and they punch the time clock and go home and they could care less what happens? They just punch out and go. They don't care. But yet there are employees that are just unbelievable, that they'll stay extra, they'll come early, they'll do what they're going to do because they feel ownership. I'm going to give you 90 seconds on this one, okay? This one's going to take 30 seconds longer. How can we help in families, in the workplace, in our churches? How can we help people feel a sense of ownership, that this is theirs? Because that which you own, you sacrifice for. That which you rent, you use. How do we build this deep sense of ownership? This is going to be a little tougher one, okay? Take off. I'm going to give you 90 seconds. I'm going to give you 90 seconds. How do you build a sense of ownership amongst the team? Okay. I got to pull you back in. Do you know what I heard as I just kind of walked around and tried to listen? I heard stories. I heard a lot of people telling stories about, let me tell you where it worked and let me tell you where it didn't work. Let me tell you who was good at this. On your sheet, it says something like, good leadership is something done with people and not to people. You do it with people. You give them a sense that you're doing this together. Did you see that there under number 2? Good leadership is not something done to people, but something done with people. And I will tell you this, when you give people a sense of ownership, I see all kinds of techniques that are used. Tell me real quickly, what were some of the ideas you guys came up with? Give me your ideas real quick.
Okay. Involve them.
Involve them.
Value them.
Value them.
Listen to them.
Oh, listen to them.
Care for them.
Care for them.
And then we kind of put it under the communication.
Communication, and we're going to get down to that. That is good. That is good. Listen to them and value them. There's one of our staff members, Pastor Terry Bly, is absolutely the finest at raising up leaders. In fact, Derry Prinkert, who's doing the senior high speaking, that's a Terry Bly product. I could take other people here working at Brown City. The Terry's this guy behind the scenes that has this amazing ability to just build these people up. And you know what his key is? His key is he empowers them. He gives them power. Now, I got to tell you a quick story. I'm a guy that when it comes to ministry, I want to see things done with excellence. Terry's a guy that wants to empower people. And those two will clash every time. Because when you empower people, your excellence will drop. It'll drop. And if you go for excellence, you're going to crowd people a little bit and take it down. So we had a couple summer interns who were with us that Terry wanted to teach them to be up on stage. And he said, I want you to go up on stage and I want you to go ahead and just share what's happening in the church this week. So they're talking about an event that's coming up. It was some big choir musical event that's coming up. And the one intern says to the other intern, well, tell me about this event. What do you think about it? What do you think about that event? And the other intern went like this. You got to watch me. Went like this. I was stunned. Here we're trying to invite people to come to something, and someone that we brought in just simply goes like this, didn't like the event that was going to happen. I felt like saying, your career is over, buddy. I mean, we didn't bring you in here to tear us down. But in reality, he came from a generation that honesty was the highest value, and he didn't really like it, and appropriateness wasn't a very high value. And so I went to Terry, and I said, Terry, what in the world? You can't do this. He said, remember what I told you about empowerment? When you empower people, you're going to have a few train wrecks along the way. Now, we're going to coach them. We're not going to have the same train wreck twice, but we're going to allow them to feel ownership. Ownership. Now, understand, when people start to feel ownership, you could have a few of these moments. Boy, I about died. I've never wanted to cut a thumb off so bad in all my life. Okay. Ownership. Number three. Key number 3. Now, we're going to be wise teams. We're going to be healthy teams. And by the way, some of you here are the keys to turning around a particular team that you're a part of. You're the key. Can I take a detour for about 2 minutes? Let me do it. Can I tell you the people that I absolutely am in love with? I absolutely love people who on teams have appointed themselves to be health monitors. Let me tell you who they are. Every team gets in a ditch. And I love people who may not be the leader, who one-on-one have an ability to go to someone who's struggling on the team and to love them. And I've watched this happen after meetings, after team events, where someone will go to someone and they'll say, ooh, I don't think that was your finest moment. Or remember the phrase I gave you yesterday, I'm struggling with what I saw. And teams that have the ability to discipline each other. I told you I'm a big Chicago Bulls fan, Michael Jordan, 23. Let me tell you what, Jordan was a piece of work. And if there was a teammate that was out of line, he called him out on it. And when you study athletic teams, you'll understand that there's usually somebody that just simply doesn't do it in a temper tantrum, but knows how to deal one-on-one with people that are out of bounds. And that can even work in the quilting circle. It can work in the quilting circle. Because every once in a while in the quilting circle, somebody lays an egg and does something they shouldn't. And privately, there are those people that have that gracious ability to simply say, we can do better than that. And I love people like that. When I get into governance issues, and I kind of am a student of how governance of organization works, I find it very fascinating how these organizations work. Generally, healthy organizations have somebody that just graciously keeps things operating healthily. And they don't have to throw a fit. They just kindly have a way of going in and taking care of it. Okay, here we go. Let's go to number 3. Let's pick up some speed. Number 3, key number 3, what's best for the team? What's best for the team? Healthy teams, wise teams are driven by doing what's best for the team. Not what's best for me, but what is best for everyone. What is best for everyone? Am I willing to put aside my personal agenda? Let me just go down through this. Effective teams must put aside personal agendas for team agendas. We call this agenda harmony. Agenda harmony. If that men's course that's saying, man, wasn't that incredible last night? I love that men's course last night. That was great. The tenors were spot on. I loved it. If they came in and everyone was singing a different piece of music, or they had different timing, that thing would have been a train wreck. We'd have done the gong show on them and got them off there fast. But what they did is they had this ability to have harmony on the song. They had agenda harmony. Now here's what happens in most teams. Most teams get in trouble because they do not have this agenda harmony. They're not in agreement. And what their agenda is, I want what I want for myself, and they have their own personal agendas. In the world of athletics, you get one player that's got an agenda of how many points they're going to score, or how many tackles they're going to get, or how many passes they're going to catch, the team won't win. But if you get everyone agreeing that the W sign is when we all get the big win. Now that's why in teams you have to be able to take people from different agendas and bring them together. And that's why when you said change lives, I loved it. Because there's agenda harmony. We're going to measure this by one thing, our lives being changed. If they're being changed, we'll put up with all the garbage. If they're not being changed, let's get them changed and let's do it. Now this is where we get into trouble because a lot of times there are people who have differing agendas. It's really tricky to run a camp like Brown City. There's tons of agendas that go on here. Tons of people that say, well, if I was Jim Keller, let me tell you what I would do. Well, the fact of the matter is, you're not Jim Keller. And Jim is going to work with a board, and he's going to work with people, and they're going to say, this is going to be our goal. This is how we're going to operate. It was kind of funny this morning. Where we're staying, we get a chance to see the office. I told you about that yesterday. So we look at the office this morning. I don't know who you are, but somebody was sitting there in a chair at about 7:15 outside the office. And then I noticed about 7:30, 7:45, a couple more people came. And then I noticed, I looked at 8 o'clock, there was a line. And I thought, and it's not the ice cream line. You know what there was a line for. You know what happened today at 8 o'clock. You got to get your lot. And what they did is they created a system and simply said, if we're going to operate, we have to have a system. And this is how we're going to do business. And everyone's going to have to learn how to do it that way. I can't come in there this afternoon and say, hey, by the way, that is my favorite lot. I'm a speaker here. I want that lot right there, and you got to give it to me. We have to have agenda harmony. Now, I want to ask you a tough question. Let's see if this will work, okay? I'm going to turn you loose for 60 seconds. I'm assuming that most all of you at some point in your life have been in a church, and you've attended a service. And churches are notorious for having problems when it comes to getting on the same page. Now, all of us, we're good at agenda harmony, but the people who didn't come this afternoon are bad at it. Where is it that most churches struggle today to get agenda harmony? They just can't be on the same page. They don't have the same agenda. They don't have the same plan of attack. There's tension. Okay, 60 seconds. It may take you about 10, but 60 seconds. What is the issue today, the big agenda harmony issue that churches face today? Here we go, 60 seconds. We can go ahead and land this ship really quick. We can land this one really quick. Although, let me tell you, you had different stuff, but there was one theme that was dominant. Now, we had some different stuff that was going on here. You guys, the first one you came up with was really interesting. Caught me by surprise. First thing was said right here was, gender harmony on how money is spent. How money is spent. And I thought, boy, I think you're right.
I want it on my program.
Yeah, my program, oh. Why do we not spend money in this department? We spend money over here in this department. Boy, that one didn't come to the top of my mind, but the more you say it, when you said that, I thought that was pretty good. There was somebody over here, where are we? Oh, back over here. These two gals, they just said the issue is strong wills. It's just strong wills. I don't care what the issue is. I want my way. It's going to be my way or the highway. And, I'm glad these people are not here today so we can talk about them, okay? Every church, I'm going to see if you're going to run me out of town when I say this. Every church, generally, historically, has one man of great influence and has one woman of great influence. Now, I got in trouble one time. I call the men a kingpin. They got a kingpin. I quoted somebody else in referring to the ladies. I didn't think it was a derogatory term because I was quoting somebody else, because I would never say this term. I think it's terrible. But a friend of mine called the lady who thinks she's in charge a bell heifer. A bell heifer. Do you understand what a bell heifer is? Yeah. It's the heifer that's got the bell around, and where it goes, everybody else better follow. And I thought it was a terrible term to use. Actually, I kind of liked it. Can I? It's just us here, okay? Maybe we should turn the tape off. I was speaking at a conference, and I used the term kingpin and bell heifer one time, and I got met afterwards by a bell heifer. By a bell heifer. Oh, man. The bell was ringing. And so ever since then, I always say, I don't like that term, and then use it anyway. Okay, now, but the one that you went quick on, what do you think was the biggest one that came up? Worship and music. It really did. It really did. Oh, man, that is so hard. Can I help you for a second on that one? Because I'm kind of caught in this my wife and I have very different musical tastes. Here's what I've discovered on worship. When I go to India, when I stand up to speak, I sometimes have to have 3 and 4 translators. We got to go into Bengali, we got to go into Hindi, we got to go into Telugu, Santali, we got to do all these languages because everyone needs to hear in their own language. And all music is a language. Now, that language is sometimes not appealing to another language group. It's just not appealing. And maturity says, I'm going to be willing to defer on what's best for the body. And that's hard. That is so hard. Worship is one of the toughest ones because right now what's happened is our generations are so diverse in our languages that both can kind of struggle with each other a little bit. And so that's when I come to people whose hair is my color, and I say, do the best you can to be gracious. Do the best you can to be gracious.
What we do is we have 3 songs out of the hymn book, and then 3 up on the...
I've heard, and I had a pastor friend that did that. He tried to balance it. And he told me, though, when he tried to do it, he said, I satisfied no one. They all didn't like it. But sometimes people do that, and it's difficult, and it's tough. It's hard. Do you ever take your radio dial and tune your dial and go through all the stations? I have Sirius XM in my car, and it's got like 200 different stations. And we travel a lot, and I'm a NASCAR fan, so Channel 90 is my favorite. It's NASCAR radio and do that. But I go through it's just got so many different styles. Some of them, I think that is just absolutely detestable. My prayer for you is it will all be spiritual, not carnal when it comes to this. And we'll all simply say whatever's best for the body. Whatever's best for the body. Now, I will tell you, I can struggle at certain things on both sides of the coin. But maturity says, I'm going to do what's best for the body. Well, let's go on. That was interesting to hear you guys talk. I like my two friends over here. They said it took them 1 second to find the one that's the tension point. And it was on music. Number 4, key number 4. Ooh, this one gets interesting. Key number 4 on healthy teams is respect, trust, open communication. You guys were working on that right over here. That was the one you guys were working on. Respect, trust, and open communication. There must be respect for gift diversification. We all are different. None of us have the same gifts, combinations. None of us have the same personalities. And teams come together. We need each other. We need the people that are going to keep the checkbook right to the penny. We need the people that are going to be sensitive to feelings. We need the people that are going to be the get up and go. We need everybody. But when we come together, there has to be a high level of confidence in the performance of those around you. And we have to learn what it is. I talk about the speed of trust. Now, I mentioned this yesterday. Let me see if I can draw this out and you can pick this up on the screen. The speed of trust goes like this. When trust is high, watch this. When trust is high, speed, S, is fast, and the cost of things is low. Now watch this. This is Stephen M.R. Covey in The Speed of Trust. When you don't trust someone, everything you do will take a lot longer. And it'll cost a lot more. Now this is true in everything. This axiom showed me the power of relationships and the power of trust. When trust is high, you can go really fast and it won't cost much. When trust is low, you got to go real slow and it'll cost a lot. Can I take you to the airport on a flight? Okay? They don't trust me when I get on an airplane. They don't trust me. They think I'm a terrorist. And so therefore, when I go to fly, trust is low, so how long does it take me to go through security? Oh my goodness. Midway in Chicago may be the worst airport in the world for security. I mean, I've had times it's been an hour in that line of security. And what happens to the cost of the ticket? They had to raise the cost because they had to charge so much to do that. Oh, take a look at government. Remember Enron and all these scandals that took place? And they came up with this law, the Sarbanes-Oxley law. If any of you are in accounting, you've heard of Sarbanes-Oxley. And what they said is, we can't trust these companies anymore. So all of a sudden, these accountants now are going to have to do all this work. Everything's going to have to slow down. And it's going to cost you a ton more money. And every accountant says, now when I do audits, it just costs an unbelievable amount. Any school teachers? My daughter's a school teacher. Today was her first day of teaching school. They're on a balanced calendar. They're not sure they trust these teachers anymore. So they have to take all these tests now. By the way, in our state, there's a teacher shortage that has started to happen because teachers are saying, I'm not putting up with this anymore. I'm not having any fun. You're cuffing my hands. And so all of a sudden, everything slows down. We have to take our church calendar now and build it around I-steps and tests and stuff. And the cost of this thing in education went straight up. Now, this thing works in the church. This thing works in the church. I'm going to be really blunt because Saturday night after I speak, I go home. So I'm going to be really blunt. If you have a pastor that you don't trust, everything's going to go really slow. And it's going to cost a lot of time and a lot of money. One of the guys on staff, some of you would know Harold Knight, Harold and Faith, pastor in this district. They've got a place here. Harold's son Chris is on staff, and Chris was on staff with us, and then for 4 years he became my district superintendent. Really cool. At 36, he was elected my DS, and it was really cool. And then he came back on staff with us and has been on staff with us now starting his second year back after he was DS. So Chris is district superintendent. I go to Chris and I say, Chris, what have you learned being district superintendent? He said, I can tell you when a pastor's service at a church is done. I said, wow. It's pretty amazing. He said, here's what I do. If I go into a church and it's in trouble, I'll ask them one question. Does your pastor love you? He said the answer to that question with a high probability of accuracy will tell me whether or not that pastor can succeed or not. Because if that parishioner does not feel loved, he's going to go somewhere where he is loved. Now that's when it comes to trust. It's interesting here at Brown City. This is a bad question to ask. Where you stay here at night, do you lock your door? When you came today, can I take a poll? When you came today to this afternoon session, did you lock the room or place where you stayed? How many of you locked? How many of you didn't lock? Okay, let me take another poll. When you're at home and you're going to leave for a day, how many of you lock your doors where you live? How many of you simply, and I'm not going to try to figure out where you live, but how many of you don't lock? You don't lock. Did you notice that the number of don't locks was a little higher for here than it was for those who are at home? Why? Your trust level is just a little higher here. This thing revolutionized me, because what I began to understand as I lead and as I build teams, I got to have team members trust each other, and they've got to believe in each other, and they've got to stand with each other. We talk about this under number 2, there must be a high level of confidence. Number 3, there must be a safe environment that encourages free discussion. Conflict, here it is. Conflict is often the fertile soil for growing relationships. Conflict, that's the last line under number 3, key 4, is often the fertile soil for growing relationships. Let me give you number 5. And we dealt with this yesterday when we did leadership. We're going to deal with it probably every single day, because on all these wisdom areas, this one becomes absolutely essential. Key number 5, healthy teams have strong conflict resolution skills. Strong conflict resolution skills. Number 1, conflicts are inevitable. They will happen. It's what you do with them that really counts. I want to show you something here. I'm going to draw this out if I can, and maybe you can see it up on the screen. I'm just going to draw a timeline. And I mentioned this yesterday, but I want to reinforce it visually today. When it comes to conflict resolution, Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to talk about peace. Okay. And what we want to be is this peacemaker right there. But the problem is most of us can tend to get out of balance. And we tend to fall to one end of the scale or the other. And I talked about this yesterday just a little bit. Over on this side, we have the peace fakers. This is Ken Sande's material that I'm quoting, peace fakers. There are some people who have never learned, I have a hunch. This could be wrong. Those of you who grew up in a family where you didn't see a lot of conflict, you probably are the type of people who don't like to see conflict, and you're going to try to minimize conflict. Is that fair to say? Yes. You grew up in an environment where there wasn't a lot, so you don't thrive on. Have you ever met somebody that just thrives on conflict? You know when they're around there's going to be conflict because they probably grew up in an environment that was loaded with conflict, right? So normalcy for them is turbulence. They just got to create turbulence. There are some people whose gift is turbulence. Now those people are over here. We call them peace breakers. Peace breakers. This little diagram helped me so much. Peace breakers are over on this side of the equation, and they're the type of people that wherever they go, they're going to create turbulence because turbulence is normal for them. And unless there's turbulence, they don't feel right. Sometimes when you work in dysfunctional families, there's a member of a family that has got to stir something up. Maybe it's because it positions them in power. Sometimes they play them. By the way, people will play out their family of origin issues in their churches. They'll play out those family of origin issues in their churches. Jesus tries to take us and say, I want you to be peacemakers. I want you to be peacemakers. I don't want you to fake it. I think I told you this yesterday. My mom and dad grew up in the Mennonite church. In the Mennonite church, in our heritage, peace was the absence of conflict. And therefore, to have conflict was intrinsically bad. So therefore, we never had conflict because we'd push it all underground. We'd push it all underground. We never knew how to confront. And I found myself needing to have those hard conversations that I talked about yesterday. Those hard conversations where we speak the truth in love. Now, sometimes somebody said to me, Dave, you're pretty hard on your Mennonite background. Well, let me tell you about my Baptist friends over here. Some of my Baptist friends have to have an enemy to fight. I know I'm being broad generalizations and this gets you in trouble. But sometimes there are people that they got to fight somebody. They got to find some politician, some group, some organization, some person in the church. They can't survive unless they do fight. And key number 5 is you learn what it is to have healthy conflict resolution skills. So I closed today kind of where I closed yesterday, trying to help you become the person that knows how to build a healthy team by developing strong conflict resolution skills. And we're going to work on that a little bit more when we get into relationships. I didn't check the sheet. I think tomorrow we work on navigating change. I think. That's tough. That's hard. But I think there's some keys we can give you and some things we've begun to discover in wisdom on how you navigate change and you do it in a way that's going to be positive. Okay? I'm going to hang back for just a couple minutes, and if you have any questions or comments, I'll just hang back here. The most important thing, this is an old Zig Ziglar deal. You've heard it 1,000 times. Your attitude will determine your altitude. There's nothing better than a team that learns to work together. And I close with taking you to the Iditarod. When they arranged those dogs, those 16 dogs, to get maximum performance, they positioned the dogs in the right order, in the right place, because when they work together, they can accomplish far more than they work independently. God bless you. I'm going to turn you loose, and I'm going to hang back for just a second.